Today's episode is crucial to this podcast because without the internet and connectivity, we wouldn't have this podcast at all. The internet has long been a privilege, especially in India. But today, we're going to explore how people are democratizing the internet by making connectivity cheaper, easier to access, and available to all. The internet has become available to most only in the past 5 years, and with it, plenty of knowledge and opportunity. Let's look at all the ways we can aspire to 100% connectivity for the next $500 million.
The next $500 million, or the NHB, are the core of this podcast. They represent the second big wave of internet users in India, hence the term next. We define them as the cohort of 500 million first-time internet users that have come online via their mobile phones. From a demographic standpoint, they are mainly from the bottom 60% of India's income distribution. They are owners of small businesses like beauty salons and kirana shops, and also blue-collar workers, domestic workers, security guards, etc. They are building a greater comfort with tech and represent the hustle and ambition of an aspiring India. I am Utsav, an ex-engineer turned market researcher, traveler, and podcaster.
And I'm Nivedita, an ex-engineer turned comedian and writer. You're listening to Smartphone Nation, how the next $500 million are shaping their future online. In today's episode, we tell you how internet connectivity is getting easier and cheaper, making smartphones and the internet more accessible than ever before. Isn't it weird that us millennials have seen a world without the internet and then watched it become the monster it is today? The producer of this podcast is a 21-year-old and has never seen a world without the internet. That makes me a little uncomfortable.
And someone like my 5-year-old nephew pretty much only understands mobile internet. I think he probably does not even know what a desktop is. There's only a decade between Gen Z and millennials, but because of the internet, they seem almost alien.
No, I'll tell you what's alien. That robot sound that we used to hear every time we had to turn the dial-up connection on. The way we couldn't make phone calls when the internet was on because it was connected to a phone. Do we have that sound? We should play it.
Oh, there it is.
It takes me back.
But for me, even that was an alien concept because in my small town, we did not even have access to dial-up connections. We had to go to a cyber cafe.
Oh, the horrors of the early internet. But we were privileged to have had it.
Absolutely. Glad that's changing now. Listen to Aditya Misra, an investor from Omidyar Network India, which is a sustainable, impact-focused investment firm. He talks about the development in internet reach over the years.
As we know, I think wireless broadband over the last 5 years has seen tremendous growth. I think we were around 200 million mobile internet users. That number is estimated to be north of 800 million now. The second part of it is fixed broadband. Now, India is estimated to have 300 million households, and fixed broadband is still only 30 million. So 1 in 10 households have fixed broadband.
India has experienced a telecom and internet revolution in the past decade, as evidenced by the growth of mobile phones, broadband, and e-commerce. The number of mobile phone users in India has grown from approximately 50 million in 2008 to over 1 billion in 2020. The availability of affordable data plans has made the internet accessible to a large part of the population.
But this story also obscures some of the realities of using the internet in India. Despite India being one of the world's cheapest internet markets, 92% of the population does not have a broadband connection.
But we do have access to mobile internet through the telecom providers, right?
We do, but 95% of the population is capped at 1.5 GB per day.
And that's not enough?
A 1.5 GB may be sufficient for accessing emails and web pages, but Gen Z consumes the internet very differently. They are not playing Snake on their Nokia phones or writing scrap messages on Orkut. They're playing Call of Duty and watching Reels on Instagram. All of this eats up a lot of data.
I see your point. While the internet seems affordable, it may not always be the case.
Absolutely. So imagine a household of 5 people with one connection of 1.5 GB. That's 300 MB per person. A 10-minute Zoom call consumes that much bandwidth. Also, it's been globally established that the cost of providing internet over Wi-Fi is a lot cheaper than 3G or 4G. So at some point, the data tariffs could go up.
That reminds me of an article which talked about edtechs having evening classes because children had to wait for their parents to return home to be able to access the internet.
And even with that, the access is not equal. Listen to WIOM founder Satyam Darmora talk about the discrepancy in access to private and public education.
So come COVID, you see two very different worlds emerging. One is an online class which is happening in private school, right? For example, like my daughter goes to a private school. So the first instruction teacher gives, nobody will switch off your videos. I want to watch you. Right? This is a COVID class in a private school. And then you look at COVID class in a low-income private school or a government school, the first instruction teacher gives, switch off your videos, otherwise you'll run out of data. Many schools, and in fact, today there was a very interesting Ken article where edtech companies are forced to have their modules in the evening when father comes back with that mobile phone, which has that 1.5 GB data limit, because throughout the day, kids just do not have access to internet. Right? This is happening right in Delhi, right in Mumbai.
It sure is happening in Delhi and Mumbai. We went to East Delhi's Shahdara locality to interview the residents about using the internet for the first time. One of the people we spoke to was Deepak Verma, who got Wi-Fi for the first time during the pandemic so his children could attend online classes.
During lockdown, classes were online, so internet was very important. My son was in 12th at that time, so it was a necessity. Now, we use the internet for our smart TV. My son uses it on his laptop.
With WIOM, Satyam and his team are solving a widespread problem: access to quality internet. There's also a big misconception on what part of India lacks connectivity. We think it's Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, but that's far from the truth.
It is not a problem of Tier 2 only. This is right in Delhi. This is right in Mumbai. Delhi would have a penetration of home internet around 15 to 20%. So 80% households in Delhi do not have home Wi-Fi. That means 80% of Delhi students or Delhi kids have 300 MB of internet.
Nitin and Shilpa are first-time internet users who also live in East Delhi's Shahdara locality. They got their first internet connection through WIOM. Nitin has a shop in one of the bylanes of a mohalla amongst people he's known all his life.
My wife and I chose WIOM as our internet service provider mainly because they provided a free router and we didn't have to worry about any additional costs. It was an incredibly tempting offer that was hard to pass up. In fact, we were so impressed by the deal that we couldn't help but share our positive experience with others. I mean, think about it. If you come across a buy one get one free deal, it only makes sense to be drawn to it, right? We even ended up convincing around 5 or 6 people in our area to give WIOM a try. It's just one of those situations where you stumble upon something too good to keep it to yourself and you feel compelled to share it with others.
It sounds like a good deal and I would buy it. But how do they do it? Let's talk about that after a short break. Welcome back to Smartphone Nation. We were talking about how WIOM makes the internet so cheap and accessible. But how do they do it? Essentially, it is a public data office aggregator, which authenticates users and connects them with their local access points of choice, after charging a specific amount. WIOM connects with people who have unutilized internet capacity, someone like a business owner, or even a home broadband user like me. WIOM's Wi-Fi management platform has been created especially for the Indian context. Hence, it can work with a normal broadband connection and does not require leased lines. Also, there is no need for any integration with different ISPs. Since WIOM is able to create more demand in bulk, it is able to get discounted rates from ISPs, which are generally 25% lower than the standard market rates.
Once access is secured, it sells the internet to people who need it. These people tend to come from low-income areas, and so the users can buy coupons from the neighborhood shops for internet access.
But what's the cost? Nitin did say he was able to sell 50-60 connections, so it must be a good deal. But what is the deal?
I'll let Satyam answer this one.
People who are like sitting on that extra loads of data and not using it, right? So it's just resharing of that internet. So we buy it from those who've got extra, we give it to those who need it, we put it in a sachet form. And in fact, 80% of our buyers are kids. And when I say kids, they would be in the age range of 12 to 20. When the family is first-time internet user, and this 5 rupee is actually the pocket money that they get to buy a packet of chips or buy a pack of cool drink, and then they end up buying internet from us.
A sales specialist from WIOM, Jaswant Singh, accompanied us on the survey, and he told us how they're able to make the internet significantly cheaper. Listen to this.
The thing is that there is no security deposit that they're asking for. There is no wiring cost. There are a lot of companies that often ask you to bear extra expenses like installation charges, router charges, etc. But with WIOM, there's none of that.
This is the democratization of the internet. Making it cheaper makes it accessible to all. And that's important because it feels like the internet should be a basic right. A lot of us could not imagine our lives without the internet. Here is Akashdeep, a PhD student from Shahdara, talking about how the internet has helped him get exposure to things he wouldn't otherwise have access to, like ChatGPT.
So with the internet, you can explore things without limitations. Now there's ChatGPT, which I did not know about, until very recently. But I've been using it for a lot of my PhD work. So I get a lot of references that I'm looking for, like all in one place. I primarily use internet to study.
Akashdeep is also a tuition teacher, and apparently the internet helps with that and other financial purposes too. Since we've come to a point in India where most payments happen online, whether it's a bill or a personal transaction.
I also teach ninth grade kids, and I was in ninth grade maybe around 11 years ago. So after all these years, when I have to teach kids, I also have to teach myself the new syllabus. And this has become very easy because of the internet. From tutoring and using it for my own studies, the internet is also very helpful for financial things. You can pay bills on Paytm, IGL. Everything is at the comfort of your home. So we can say that internet has reduced, the running around a lot.
India needs its next $500 billion to be able to participate in the information economy. It needs them to be able to access the best entertainment and services at a cost which is affordable to them. And organizations like WIOM are enabling that. Let's listen to Aditya again, who has invested in WIOM, talk about the company's impact.
To sort of just make internet more equitable, right? Because I think these are we all have Wi-Fi, imagine education as a use case. Through COVID, for so many children in underprivileged households, just getting a regular stream of data or access to information was extremely hard. And that was because they were reliant on mobile data, which eventually caps out beyond a point. And we don't realize how much, just 1 hour, 30 minutes of viewing on a OTT platform, it exhausts your data. We don't know that because we might not use our phones for that, right? So we use Wi-Fi at home, etc. So I think those are real challenges, and that's what WIOM is trying to solve for, and makes them an incredible fit.
Companies like WIOM enable small business owners to sell excess bandwidth and create an additional revenue stream for them. In turn, low-cost internet breaches the affordability barrier for India's next $500 billion. One day, we are going to have 100% internet equity and connectivity. It would drive higher social and economic participation, and more people will be able to exploit the potential of the internet. Until then, thank you for tuning into Smartphone Nation. I'm Utsav.
And I am Nivedita. This was Smartphone Nation. Tune in next week for another story on how the next $500 billion are shaping their future online. If you like our show, please subscribe to the Smartphone Nation YouTube channel. Don't forget to rate and review us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Share this episode with your friends as it helps the show reach more people.
You can listen and subscribe to Smartphone Nation on the IVM Podcasts app or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is also available in Hindi and Tamil. A special thanks to Omidyar Network India for making this season possible. To know how ONI is partnering with bold and purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are working to improve the lives of India's next $500 billion, visit omidyarnetwork.in. Tell us what you think of the show. You can find our hosts on Twitter and Instagram. Utsav can be found on the Instagram ID at YWeTravel42. You can reach out to Nivedita on Instagram at niv.prakasam. You can follow IVM on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the ID at IVM Podcasts.
IVM